Good morning, class. So this is the review for Unit 4.1, the Exodus study guide. And hopefully this will help you review for your test. So let's just get into it. I want to remind you, of course, that on Edline you can find, if you're missing any of the notes from this unit, you can go up here to Notes and Assignments, and you can find every little thing you could ever want. All the warm-ups, all the homeworks, all the PowerPoints, everything right there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then the one we did for homework, the Passover one, right there. I'll be talking about this one later, so make sure you know where this one is, because I'm not going to talk about this because I already made a video about it. Alright, but let's get started. What are the different groups that make up the Israelites? If you look in, this is number 2, Old Testament nomenclature, it talks about the different groups. So the Israelites is a group that's comprised of the original Hebrews, but then other people who lived in the land of Canaan, like the Canaanites, the Shashu. This group, the Hapiru, which we think might be the same as the Hebrews that the Egyptians talk about, and other sea peoples. Groups that would not be a part of them would be some of like the big empires, like the Egyptians would not be part of the Israelites, the Babylonians would not be part of the Israelites. These were the small tribes that kind of got brought into their culture and cultural understanding. Define the following. The term idolatry means the worship of creatures or man-made things instead of God. Manna is the unleavened bread that God gave them in the desert. He said it appeared on the ground, kind of like frost in the morning. A Levite is someone from the tribe of Levi, who is the tribe of priests. That's Moses and Aaron's tribe. And the Ark of the Covenant is a big golden container that the Israelites put the Ark of the Covenant, that they put the 10 Commandments in. They also put Moses' staff and some of the manna in there, but mostly it's known for carrying the 10 Commandments, and they carried it into battle with them, and that's what eventually would get placed in the temple. But until they got a temple, they just used a tent. What is Passover? Passover is an 8-day Jewish meal. Actually, if you want to know about this, I would go to homework 3, and there's a video that goes along with this that tells you all about Passover, so you can go listen to that. And that goes also for number 22, which would be a good one to make sure you read, because one of these two is probably going to be your essay question, or maybe you'll have both of them. Who knows? Alright, let's go moving on to number 4. How do the Hebrews become enslaved in Egypt? Pharaoh decides that they're too numerous and too strong, so he enslaves them and puts them into forced labor. We'll explain why Moses isn't raised by his mother, because the Pharaoh says he wants to kill all the young boys in the land so that the Hebrews can't grow strong and overthrow them. So Moses' mom puts him in a basket, sends him down the river, and he gets raised by Pharaoh's daughter. Why does Moses flee from Egypt? Because when he grows up, he sees an Egyptian abusing a Hebrew worker, and he kills the guy, and then he finds out that people know about it, and so he flees and runs off into the desert, where he meets his wife and gets married, and also meets God. How does God first speak to Moses in the desert? Moses is out in the desert tending his flocks, and he's up on this mountain, and he sees this bush on fire, but it's not consumed, and the bush speaks to him. What are the 3 words used for God in the Old Testament? What does each one mean? Again, this is number 2. The names for God. The word Elohim is just the word for God, like the fire god or the wind god. It doesn't mean like the God. It just means any old God. Lowercase g. Yahweh means I am. That's the actual name of the God of Israel, and that's who we're talking about when we talk about God generally as Christians. And when Moses asks God what his name is, he says, I am who am, which in Hebrew is Yahweh. And they don't say that like ever. They say it like once a year. The high priest in the temple says it, and he whispers it, but other than that, they don't say it. It's considered blasphemous. So instead, they use this word Adonai, which means Lord. Even when they write it down most of the time, if you look in your Bible, they just put the Lord in capital L-O-R-D, meaning we would be saying this, but since we don't say that, we're saying this instead. But this is who we're talking about. What objection does Moses make to God's call, and what is God's response to each? So Moses is like, who am I that you would send me? I'm nobody. And God's like, well, I'll be with you. And he says, but wait, I'm not a good speaker. So he says, oh, well, I'll send Aaron with you because Aaron's a good speaker. So Aaron's his brother. But then he's like, wait, what if they don't believe me? And so God's like, well, and this is, where is it? Oh, maybe this isn't another question. But anyway, so Moses says, well, what if they don't believe me? So God says, I'll give you these 3 signs you can do. One, you can throw your staff down and it'll turn into a snake, and then you can pick it up again and it'll turn back into a staff. Or you can put your hand into your cloak, and when you pull it out, it'll be leprous and like white and flaky and decrepit, and then you can put it back in and your cloak, and when it comes out, it'll be wet again. Or you can take a bucket and take water out of the Nile and pour it on the ground, and it'll turn into blood. So those are 3 things you can do to make people to believe that I actually did send you. What is Pharaoh's response when Moses first requests that he let the Hebrews go out in the desert to pray? He's like, heck no, you can't do that. They're lazy, and he increases their work even more and makes them make their bricks that they always had to make, but he doesn't give them the straw. So they have to do more work with the same, and they're expected to keep up the same quota of bricks that they were making. Why do the Hebrews complain in the desert? Oh, for like every reason, because they're afraid of the Egyptians, because they're, they don't have any food, and then when he gives them bread, they're like, oh, we don't have any meat, and then he gives them meat, and they're like, oh, well, we don't have any water. So like at every turn they complain. What form does God appear to the people on Mount Sinai on the 3rd day? He appears, and I put a actually better picture here. I have 2 pictures here on this PowerPoint. This is the one that I showed you was this one. He appears as a cloud and like a thunderstorm, and the mountain starts erupting like a volcano, and it's pretty cool, actually. It's in Exodus 19. You can read about it there. But it says the thunder shook the mountain, and it was erupting, and there was light and clouds and a big old storm. It's pretty cool. How is the Sinai covenant different from God's covenant with Abraham? The law of Moses. This is number 5. The Hebrews, as part of the covenant here at Sinai, are expected to follow the law. That is their obligation. That's their part of the covenant. How does Moses seal the covenant? He sprinkles the people with the blood of a bull that they sacrificed. What did it mean to be ritually unclean? This is kind of a strange, obscure concept for us. So the law of Moses, to be unclean meant that you couldn't offer sacrifice to God. It didn't necessarily mean something bad. It was just like a state, meaning you couldn't make sacrifice. And to be able to make sacrifice again, either you had to wait, or you had to like do some sort of cleansing ritual, or you had to do some sort of little sacrifice, which is weird because you weren't able to offer sacrifice, but I guess you could do these kind of cleansing sacrifices. But again, it didn't mean bad. In fact, sometimes good things like sex and childbirth and stuff like that were considered sacred made you unclean. But it doesn't mean like we think unclean nowadays and versus clean in a spiritual sense, and we think sinful, but that's not really what they meant. Why did the Hebrews make a golden calf, and what's it supposed to be? So when Moses goes up on the mountain for 40 days to talk to God, they get scared that he's not coming back down, so they have Aaron make a golden calf, and it's supposed to be a god. Actually probably represents the Canaanite god Baal, B-A-A-L, and so they worship that. So when Moses comes down, he sees the people worshiping the golden calf. He has the 10 Commandments in his hand on the 2 tablets, and he gets furious and throws them on the ground and shatters them. And then he grinds up the golden calf and puts it into water and makes the people drink it. So he makes them consume the golden calf. What strange things happen to Moses after he's been talking with God? His face shines. He's like, he has to wear a veil over his face because his face shines really brightly. 19. What does God warn the people about before they enter the promised land? He warns them, and this is in the book of Deuteronomy, he warns them not to get like spoiled, to not, he warns them against the dangers of prosperity and abundance. He's like, look, you're not going to have to depend on me for your food. You're going to be able to grow your own crops and stuff, but don't forget about me. Don't take all this for granted. Don't think don't get prideful and think you can do it all yourself. Who will lead the people into the promised land? It'll be Joshua, because Moses gets to the edge of the promised land and gets to see it, but he dies before he goes in. What other 10 Commandments? If you look at the one on the law of Moses, actually that's not true. Where is it? Call with Moses wondering this. I think it's the covenant assignment. The 10 Commandments. There they are, and this is how Catholics number them, but they get numbered different ways, as you can see here. I don't really care how you number them, as long as you have all 10. If you don't have a way that you normally number them, I would go with the Catholic one, the Catholic version. But if you're used to numbering them a different way, that's fine too. but you will have to know those for the test in order as much as possible, but do your best. Again, I'm not going to talk about this one because I already made a video on that, which you can find right this one, homework 3. Okay, and there's a video that goes along with it. Now, number 23, explain how the law of Moses was important to the Hebrews on both a cultural and a religious moral level. What was the relationship between the law and the covenant? This one would be here. So on a cultural level, this law kind of had some strange rules about what they were supposed to dress and how they're supposed to eat, and fasts and not working on certain days and things like that. And basically, it was just supposed to make them culturally different from the nations that surrounded them, to insulate them from the sinful influences of other nations. So when they get captured by Babylon, they have this really strange culture, so they don't follow the Babylonians, and they're able to stay culturally Hebrew. But the second aspect of it is the moral and religious aspects, where they're expected not to steal and not to kill and to give to the poor. Sorry, I got cut off there. So I'll start again. So the second function of the law is the moral and religious teachings that teaches them to live in the image of God. And these are the things like don't steal and don't kill and to give to the poor and all those things that we normally associate with what a good religious person does. So there was that aspect of it too, and these are the parts that Christians kept up with, because once Jesus came and opened up salvation to everyone, we didn't kind of need to maintain this kind of alternate culture, this culture set apart. Although in some ways Christians are supposed to live a life set apart, but we didn't have to maintain the Jewish cultural identity in the same way that they did, because they were God's chosen people. So the moral and religious things, and even these have to do with every aspect of life. This is kind of one of the cool things about the law, is they had laws about all these kind of various aspects of life: how to have a family, how to eat and do everything, how to work. And basically the point of that was to show that God is the Lord of our entire lives, that God has something to do with all of those things. God is a part of all those different aspects of your life. It's not just the explicitly religious things that God is a part of. God is part of everything. So those are the two functions of the law. And the relationship between the law and the covenant is the law is their side of the covenant. That's their obligations to the covenant, is to uphold the law. And they agree at Sinai that if they don't follow the law, that God can punish them. That's what they sign up for. And so that's the relationship of the law to the covenant. I think that just about covers it. Again, I didn't cover this one, or where is it? What is Passover? Numbers 3 and 22, and then that's because you'll have to watch the video that goes along with homework 3, which again you can find on Adeline right here. And I highly suggest you do, because that's likely one of your essays that's going to be on the test. All right, good luck.